What's up, guys? Today I wanted to talk about some awesome smartphones that you could buy for the $200 price point, and so let's go ahead and jump in. So usually I really like older flagship phones, but this was one of the phones that kind of surprised me this year, the Galaxy A34. As you guys know, I tested out the A54, wasn't a huge fan for the price that you had to pay for that phone, but this was pretty interesting. It was $250, and I didn't think it was bad at all. You can get it $250 brand new. It's an all plastic design on here. It's IP67 dust and water resistant. Besides the phone being plastic, it overall has a pretty good weight and actually a pretty nice design. I really like the color kind of shifting on this model, and it kind of looks like, you know, a standard S23 with the camera setup. So overall, the design I thought was pretty nice. I don't think anybody would look at this and say it's a $200 phone. The screen on here was actually pretty good as well too. It's a Super AMOLED display, 120 Hz, 1000 nits brightness at 6.6 inches, 1080p 390 for the PPI. Overall, a very good display, even though it does have the water drop notch, which are a little bit outdated. But other than that, the screen quality was awesome. As you guys know, Samsung pretty much makes the best displays on the market, and I thought the screen quality was really good. Like I said, 120 Hz, great colors, and it's a pretty nice size for most people. Comes with Android 13, One UI 5.1 out the box. I think the most impressive thing about this phone was the MediaTek chip. It has the MediaTek Dimensity 1080 on here, and it was really good. It was able to play PUBG at pretty respectable settings. It was pretty smooth when it came to animations and just popping in and out of, you know, your applications and stuff like that. Overall, I was actually pretty impressed with the performance. It's pretty much on par with something like a Snapdragon 855, and again, not as well optimized for gaming. Still, it wasn't able to do PUBG HDR Extreme. So if you're a gamer, you probably still want to go with an older flagship. But it does have micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM on the base model. So having the SD card support is always nice. The speakers on here were pretty decent. You have also NFC under the display fingerprint sensor. It's optical, but it works fine. I didn't really have any issues with it. So one of the things about this phone I thought would be really bad was the cameras. And that wasn't the case. The cameras were pretty decent. They weren't like crazy good, but I thought they were pretty decent. You get a decent shot. 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 5 megapixel macro that shoots in 4K 30 with a 13 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 30. And again, is this the best camera you can get for a $200 price point? Absolutely not. I have a phone on this list. I think all the phones, you know, coming on this list take better pictures than this one. But I thought the photo quality was somewhat decent. I didn't think it was terrible photos. It also has a very good battery life, 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt charging. Excellent battery life. Definitely get a full day out of this phone. So even though I'm not a huge fan of mid-rangers, I thought this was actually pretty decent. Really surprised me. One of my favorite pickups of the year is actually the Galaxy S21 Plus. Again, you can find this phone for around 200 bucks, and it's just a very impressive phone for this price point. It's still got a very sleek and nice design. It's got an aluminum frame on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and I think it just looks awesome even in 2023. It's got the dynamic AMOLED, 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1300 nits peak brightness with a 6.7 inch display. It's also 1080p 394 for the PPI. Absolutely beautiful display, flat display. Really nice, respectable bezels on here, and just a classic, you know, beautiful Samsung panel on here. Does great in outdoor sunlight. And then you also have on here Android 13, so it is running 13. It will get Android 14 as well, which is really nice. It has the Snapdragon AAA processor on here, and this phone still does a really good job with gaming performance. If you guys want to see a more detailed video, I do have it on the channel, but it plays PUBG, HDR Extreme, and pretty much anything else I threw at it, and it didn't seem to overheat, or I wouldn't say overheat, but get as warm as the S21 Ultra that I have. So this phone, I really like it. I was on it, and I wasn't having any type of, you know, any serious heating problems. It also has no SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 8 gigs of RAM. The stereo speakers on here are pretty good. Under the display fingerprint sensor is ultrasonic, so it's very fast. You also get all the extra flagship stuff like Samsung desktop support and pretty much all the same features besides the S Pen stuff. The cameras on here are still excellent. It has a 12 megapixel standard, 64 megapixel telephoto with 1.1 optical and 3 times hybrid zoom. And then it also has a 12 megapixel ultra wide, shoots in 8K 24. And then you also have a 10 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. Photo quality is still really, really good. I still think it takes flagship quality shots on here and pretty good video. I was really impressed. So no one would take pictures with this phone and say that the camera is bad, especially for this price. It's really, really good. It has a 4800 milliamp hour battery with 25 watt charging and wireless and reverse wireless charging. Overall, it's a fantastic phone. Great design, great price, great screen, very fast. It's just a awesome phone to consider. Next is the Pixel 6a. You also can get the standard Pixel 6, but I thought that the battery life on the 6a was actually better. But you do have on this phone aluminum frame. It's got a plastic back, so it still has a very nice premium feel to it. It's IP67 dust and water resistant. I think the only downside with this phone is that there's no high refresh rate. It's just an OLED display, HDR at 6.1 inches, 1080p 429 for the PPI. Overall, a pretty good display. It's just lacking any type of high refresh rate. That's why I said you might want to get the Pixel 6 if that does bother you. But overall, the screen quality itself is still pretty good. This phone is going to get the Android 14 update. It's got the original Google Tensor chip, and it's actually still pretty fast. I had no issues getting in and out of applications, animations, even playing video games on this phone was pretty decent. So overall, for the chip, I have no problems. And like I said, it runs pure stock Android. You get updates pretty fast as well too. And again, no issues. 128 gigs and 6 gigs of RAM for the base model. It has actually very good stereo speakers on here, very good bass quality. It has the optical fingerprint sensor, which works fine. And like I said, the highlight with this phone is that it takes the best photos on this list. It's got a 12.2 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60 with an 8 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 1080p 30. This phone, every time when it came out, it did a really good job in the blind smartphone test, and it just takes awesome shots, guys. It's going to give you still top-notch flagship quality shots. And like I said, the battery life is actually still pretty good. It's got a 4,410 milliamp hour battery with 18 watt charging, and you can definitely get a day out of the battery life on this phone. So overall, I just absolutely love this phone for the cameras. All right, if you are interested in iPhones, I think the best iPhone to get right now on a budget is definitely the iPhone 11. This phone just got iOS 17 as well too, and you can easily find these for around like 250 bucks. And it still has a very nice design. It's got the aluminum frame. It's really nice to hold in the hand. It still looks, I think, still pretty modern for a phone that came out in 2019. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. It got a 6.1 inch Retina IPS display, and then it's 720p plus 326 for the PPI. And overall, the display is fine. No, it's not OLED or anything. And it doesn't get super bright in direct sunlight, but the display itself is fine. Colors look fine, so it's nothing too crazy. I think the best thing about this phone is that it has the latest software running iOS 17. It's got the Apple A13 chip, which is still very, very fast. This phone still surprisingly is super smooth. It does animations really quickly. I was able to play PUBG at HDR Extreme still. I was actually pretty impressed with the performance of this phone, so I can't really knock it for speed. It's still actually really, really fast phone. It's got 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. And then you also have pretty decent stereo speakers. Of course, you have the Face ID, and then you also have the dual camera setup. It's a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Shoots in 4K 60 and has a 12 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. I compared this phone to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I thought the pictures looked pretty good on the 11 still. Obviously not as good, but just still really respectable. Pretty good color, pretty good detail, good dynamic range. It still takes great video, so it still takes pretty good photos in my opinion as well, even compared to the newest iPhone. You also have on here pretty decent battery life. I think 87% battery health on mine. I can squeeze close to about 6 hours of screen on time as a light user, so battery life is pretty decent. It's got a 3,110 milliamp hour battery, and you also have the wireless charging as well. And last is the LG V60. This is still such an awesome phone. You can actually find it well under $200 now on Amazon. I think it's like 180 on there right now, and it's just a fantastic phone. It's got an aluminum frames, glass back, it's IP68 dust and water resistant. This phone has dual screen case capability. You also have an S Pen with this phone. Not an S Pen, but just it has stylus support. And then you also have a 6.8-inch POLED display. It's HDR10 plus, 1080p 395 for the PPI. Overall, just a big, beautiful panel here. And like I said, you can use that dual screen case and basically turn it into two phones. This phone, it did get the Android 13 update, and it actually is still getting security patches for now. It also has the Snapdragon 865 chip on here, micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 8 gigs of RAM. This phone is still extremely fast when it comes to gaming. You can play PUBG, HDR Extreme, just bouncing in and out of applications, animation. It's still a very, very fast phone, does not feel slow at all. And like I said, the SD card support is here, and you also have a headphone jack on this phone with quad DAC support. So this phone really has everything you could want for a power user for sure. You also have on this phone pretty good stereo speakers as well too, so it gets pretty good bass quality and pretty loud. You also have a under the display fingerprint sensor which works. No face unlock though, unfortunately. The cameras on here are still pretty decent. It's a 64 megapixel standard and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. Has a 0.3 depth sensor and shoots in 8K 30. Has a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 30. I compared this phone's camera to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it still did a pretty good job, even compared to one of the latest smartphones. So I think the cameras on here are pretty good. Great color, good dynamic range. So overall, I was pretty impressed with the image quality that the V6 is still able to put out. And battery life is actually pretty good on this phone. I can definitely get a full day of battery life out of this phone, no problem. You also have wireless charging on here. And like I said, you get all this stuff for pretty much under $200. So it's an excellent, excellent phone. All right, that's pretty much it, guys. Be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.